Yes, I left the music on this particular time because even though I'm going to get a little match with it and demonetizes, I like the music. I'll edit it out afterwards. You can go in, you can actually remove it. But I like the music to that intro. So I'm just going to have it. But you guys are the only ones going to hear it because the people that watch this after the fact, they're not going to hear it because I'm going to mute it because if I can make 30 cents off a video, that's great, which actually is a lot nowadays for a video. If I can make a few pennies a video. But anyways, welcome to the discussion table. I have a really awesome guest today. You guys probably not heard of him because I think he's relatively new on this scene, but he has a small channel, I think 1.5K subscribers.
Yeah,
give or take. Okay, but you are an actual philosopher, like legit philosopher.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I've studied philosophy at the University of Nijmegen, and I started doing that when I came to faith in God. And that's when I really got interested in philosophy, because it was arguments for God's existence that drove me to theism. And then I realized that's actually philosophy, and I was interested to know more about it.
And I love that, by the way. So let me make sure that people can hear everybody, hear me, hear him. I have everybody unmuted, and I think I got it right. I also figured out that OBS, you can actually do enable auto start and stop, which I didn't know. That's one of the reasons why the other day it started automatically. But I am doing it through Studio because I want to be able to manually control that. But so you are known as a Thinking Dutchman. I cannot pronounce your first name correctly. I'm not going to try. I'm going to say Karel, but it's not. So if you want to tell, how do you say it?
You say it as Karel. You have to really say the R.
But I can't roll my R's. What do I do?
That's a problem for many Americans.
Yeah, no, I'm genetically predisposed. I can't. My Spanish teacher cringed every time I said the word dog because it came out as butt. So I can't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, seriously, I can't roll my R's.
But
Carl's
fine.
Carl, okay. See how we Americanize everything here? It's all about the Americans, right?
Yeah, true.
Oh, are we duplicated on this chat? We are duplicated. Okay, let me fix that. I noticed that just now, so I think I could. Here, fix this real quick. Let me just fix the chat thing. So anyways, tell people about your channel real quick while I fix the chat thing.
I started my channel, Thinking Dutchman, relatively recently. And it's because I'm a filmmaker as a profession, and also a philosopher, and I'm really into apologetics. So I was thinking, what's the best thing for me to do? Well, I should combine filmmaking and philosophy and apologetics. So why not start a YouTube channel and start defending the Christian faith? So that's what I'm doing.
And how long have you been actually a theist or a Christian? Longer than even a philosopher?
Now for 8 years. When I was 23, I came to faith, and before that, you could call me an agnostic. I just didn't know if there was such a thing as truth, and if there was such a thing as truth, whether we could know it. I was really thinking that, especially truth about God or something, that it's unknowable for us. So it's not even good to start investigating it, because why should you if you can't know it anyway? But that changed, obviously, when I was 23.
So so people know he's using agnostic in the epistemological sense, not the ontological sense of knowability of God.
Yeah.
So which we'll get into, because I watched a couple of your videos, but one of the ones that I really liked was the Ricky Gervais one.
Yeah.
And the link is in the video description, so people go check it out and go subscribe to his channel. But I'm not a huge fan of Ricky Gervais. Matter of fact, I think he's funny, but as far as philosophy, he's shit. He's just, he is like low-hanging fruit, and everything he says is just idioms, and it makes no sense. And you point this out in your video, which things I've been saying for many years. Okay.
Yeah.
What is it about? Okay, why did you decide to make a video about Ricky Gervais, pointing out? By the way, objectively, the same things I have said. There's a few things we'll talk about where I think I may not fully agree, but for the most part, you're right. He doesn't understand atheism. He just throws out idioms and tropes and things of that nature, but has no understanding of the topic whatsoever, I think.
Yeah, well, Ricky Gervais is very popular, and I really like discussions, and I think that it's really nice to have discussions with atheists. But what Ricky is doing is saying, oh, we don't even need to discuss this because we just lack a belief. We don't have any burden of proof. Well, I think it's not helpful when you're in the pursuit of truth to just claim that you lack a belief, because it's not fair. everybody has a worldview, and everybody has a burden of proof to defend their worldview. And I think, especially with atheism, that yeah, there are some positive beliefs related to atheism that should be defended. And I think that atheists should just uh, yeah, come out and say what they believe instead of just claiming that they lack belief. And that's why I thought, oh, maybe this is a good video to make, so we can have I can promote discussion between atheists and theists.
So let me
that
ask
was
you,
the reason.
what from where you're from, what is atheism actually? If you ask the average person on the street, and by the way, I agree with everything you just said, but if you just go and went, to a bar and you started talking about atheism, what would they infer from that saying, hey, look, I'm an atheist? Because nowadays in America, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. They say they're atheists. It can mean 1,000 different things. I've come up with at least 12 different stipulative type definitions for atheism. When I read the literature, though, and I read a lot of peer-reviewed papers and stuff like that, I literally, I think everything. I don't think I found one paper that differs, except for maybe them advocating for a negative usage, like Flew, Martin, or Bullivant. But every other paper is this: atheism is a positive epistemic status. It is the belief that God does not exist. How is it over where you're at? You're in the Netherlands? Is that where you're at now?
Yeah, I'm in the Netherlands. And what's interesting is that in America, there's more debate going on, and people are more how do you say that, busy talking about this. Well, in the Netherlands, this is not even an issue. People don't talk about this. So when you talk about the existence of God, they don't even know what their worldview is. So if you would ask them what they believe, they would say something. Then I would give a label to them, and then they would say, "Oh, well, then that's what I am, apparently."
So it's not really a topic that comes up much.
No, in the Netherlands, apologetics and philosophy, it's not really a topic that people talk a lot about, and it's more popular in the States. But I think it will change. But the Netherlands is a bit behind, I think.
Well, I think here, I mean, one thing you can say about the atheist activists in America, they have at least got the topic of the discussion going, but it's like the gateway drug to philosophy. It's like Ayn Rand objectivism. People may read about it initially and go, "Oh, this is interesting," then realize how ridiculous it actually is. And of course, people that get more into philosophy and more into epistemology look at, like you said, the lack of belief approach they're taking. When a lot of them don't understand what their epistemic commitments are with that. I don't think atheism specifically is, I mean, I am fine with somebody say it's a worldview. I don't care. I don't particularly agree with worldviews in general. I think we have one worldview, and that's just your overall theory of reality.
Yeah.
But have somebody wants to say, look, atheism is some type of worldview. I don't have a problem with that, because atheism does seem to me, even if you don't believe, has some kind of commitments. Like you had pointed in your video, hey, look, there is either an intelligence that have created the earth and the universe, some kind of intentional being, or there's not. That's one or the other. And if the atheist wants to say, look, I'm not going to hold the position that it's a deity or intelligence, then I have to start finding some other explanation, some other metaphysical accounting. I have no problem with that argumentation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the responses I got from atheists is, well, atheism isn't a worldview because there are many different worldviews like humanism, Buddhism, Marxism, and other worldviews, and they don't agree with each other. So they say, well, it's not one worldview. And then I would say, yeah, that's true, but that's not the point, because there are many theistic worldviews as well. There's not just one. Mm-hmm. But atheism implies certain positive beliefs, such as what you just mentioned, that if atheism is true, if there's no God, then there's not a designer of the universe. Then probably you will be a materialist. So you will believe that matter precedes mind and not the other way around, while theists would say mind precedes matter. But then you're in a realm that you really have to argue for the truth of your position. And in that sense, everybody has a worldview. So that's what I was trying to bring across in the video.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's, I find it odd when people start talking about like materialism. I don't really hold materialism. If anything, maybe property dualism, but I don't think substantive dualism makes sense. And I think I'm like vanilla philosophy, man. You got like Hegel over here, and you got maybe like Wittgenstein or something over here. I don't know. I'm like in the middle of these of everything. I don't really have no extreme positions.
Okay.
But there seems to be at least an epistemic entailment for people that say, look, I don't hold the position that there's some intelligent agent that some metaphysical necessity that is a reason for all things. I'm okay with that, but does it necessarily entail materialism? I'm not convinced that it does. However, it seems to indicate that. But it's weird when people say, "Look, I am a materialist. Everything is physical. There is no thing as supernatural." But I'm not saying there are no gods. Well, yes, you are. There's an epistemic commitment there. This is what I get into my videos and my blogs to say, "Look, you have an inconsistent logical system." Like you had said, atheism being true or false, which is totally coherent. But to a person who says, hey, atheism is not even a proposition, it's merely a psychological state of unbelief.
So it can't be true or false.
It can't be true or false. And you said this in your video, and I'm like, oh, I like this guy because that's what I've been saying. I mean, I literally have a blog on this very thing, telling people. Yeah, no, I've been saying this for a long time, but I put it in a blog not too long ago, that an atheist cannot have a logically coherent system by saying atheism is not propositional, but atheism can be true. Those are two. You can't. Those both cannot be true at the same time, because if it's not propositional,
exactly,
it can't be true or false.
Yeah. So it's meaningless. Yeah.
So I was happy to hear that in your video. One of the things I did kind of disagree with, and yes, people will be able to call in here if they want. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but I'll put the number up eventually. And again, this might just be a difference in terminology, but I hold, when you said something like reject theism, right? I hold to rejectionism in the free Geach approach, which is it's called the belief of the negation. So when you say I reject P, it is I believe not P, and that is how I read it in the literature.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you said reject P, I reject God or whatever, reject Christianity. I think to the viewer you were talking about just non-acceptance or refusal. You know, but it's. I just wonder if you meant it that way, or do you hold the terms the same way I do? That reject imply, and again, this is how I read the literature. Reject means to believe the negation. Deny means to assert the negation with some kind of assertoric force. The refuse P just means to merely not accept.
So what was your position again then? You reject.
I don't reject the proposition God exists, but I don't accept it either. I'm an agnostic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What I would do then is ask you, what do you believe, and then discuss about the positive beliefs and see if you can carry your burden of proof there.
Absolutely. Look, I love that, because I have I don't know if you know Dr. Malik. He wrote a paper called "Defining Atheism and the Burden of the Proof." Great paper.
No, I don't know him.
He's a great guy. As a matter of fact, he just, I felt bad. He left me a voicemail yesterday, and I haven't read it yet. I haven't listened to it yet. I saw it come up, but we're going to do something on his paper, because I have done a blog on his paper, and he really liked it before. But my position is that even an agnostic has a burden of proof. Even a lack theist or lack of belief atheist has a burden of proof. If I tell you, hey, I exist, and you go, hey, I don't believe you, I might want to know your reasons for this, right? I think it's kind of odd that you don't accept me existing, right?
Yeah, I think there's some self-evident truths that we all should accept, and we don't need to argue for. And then if you don't agree with that, then you should give a very good argument as to why it isn't true.
Right.
Those self-evident truths.
So why is it you think, let me get to the super chat real quick and ask a question. Kawasa, 5001. It's no fun when you get a smart guy as a guest and just makes sense of stuff clearly and easily. Hey, look, I know, man. I know. I try to get shitty people every so often, man, but they kind of get scared of me. So occasionally I got to get somebody good in. Yeah, my audience is like, oh, this is too boring. They get along. They agree on things. We can't have this. Suffer, guys. Suffer through it. And he's a Christian too. Oh my God, an agnostic and a Christian agreeing on philosophy. What is this? Cats and dogs living together? But what do you think the reason is? A lot of atheists prefer this. Oh, I just merely don't believe. Atheism is merely I don't believe you, which, by the way, is not found anywhere in the literature. Flew tried it in 1972 with the presumption of atheism, which was a complete disaster. But very few prominent philosophers take this position. I know Bullivant tends to it a little bit. Martin did. He's dead. So forget him.
In philosophy, this is not an accepted way to talk about it, because you can't have a normal discussion if you just talk about your psychological state.
Right.
Philosophers are interested in truth, and that's it.
Yeah, because how do you test a psychological state? Okay, this is your psychological state. Great.
Yeah, whatever.
It's true you have one, but whether your psychological state is true or not, I don't care. I want to know about the ontology of God's existence in this particular case.
Exactly.
Like you said, your beliefs. And yes, I have beliefs. One of the beliefs that I have as an agnostic is that I have suspended judgment. I have been unable to reach a conclusion to convince me that God exists or God does not exist. I'm just getting more. You can call it evidential agnosticism if you like. You can call it zero data agnosticism. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. It all about the same thing.
But you're not an agnostic that says it's impossible to know that God exists. It's impossible to know these things.
Yeah, because
you are open to the evidence.
That's a different type of agnostic. That's in the epistemological domain, right, rather than the ontological domain. So about the knowability of gods. Why wouldn't something be knowable or not? I don't care one way or another if it's knowable or not.
So what kind of evidence would convince you that there is a God?
You're going to hate the answer to this. Okay, again, these are very personal type beliefs, and I'm happy to share them. But I call them non-transportable justifications. That's my particular term for them, meaning that they might be justifiable to me, but I'm not going to use them as justification for somebody else. And I think we all have sense data like that. So I think that the evidence for me comes from experience. Let's say that I had a spiritual experience, and I've had weird things happen, things I can't explain. But I can't relate that to somebody else, right? I can't impart those things to somebody else. And I'm sure that if I've had experiences, other people have had experiences. And so if they want to determine that was a deity that was a causation of that, who am I to stop them? I can't make the leap that it was deity, but it certainly gives me pause to question fundamental things about our nature of reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what kind of experience are you talking about then?
Well, I mean, people always talk about, having a personal relationship with Christ or some kind of a religious experience. And look, if people started walking out of graves, right? If people rose from the dead and I was legit seeing this, I'll believe what the hell you tell me at that point, pretty much, right?
So if you were a Jew living in Palestine and you would see the risen Christ, then you would say, I'll believe. Yeah.
Well, and by the way, I am Jewish. My mom's Jewish.
Oh, really?
Culturally speaking. But yeah, I mean, I find it odd when atheists say, look, I could never believe in a God. The gods are impossible. No matter what happens, I wouldn't believe. I'm like, well, that's just being epistemically closed-minded, because I think if there's a powerful enough being that existed with enough evidence, people coming back from the dead, sure, you can come up with all these ad hoc things. Some alien race is messing with our minds, or some Descartes demon. But look, I'm not gonna care at that point. I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna go ahead. Is a God or something? If I see something to that extreme, I'm definitely gonna give him a little bit more credence that has happened before, right? Yeah. And so, to me, it's personal experience. To your answer, to your question.
And if there were eyewitnesses who said, "Well, we saw him risen from the dead," then you would say, "Well, I have to see it for myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't believe you."
Well, something along those lines. Look, I don't subscribe to ECRI, which is the extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I think this is it's kind of a. I think it does. I don't think people really.
It's a slogan.
It's a slogan. Yeah, it's a slogan. It's a mantra. It's a trope. It's a rule of thumb But I think if people really looked into it, they'd realize it makes things subjective rather than objective, and the amount of evidence is really the same for stuff. Look, if you tell me you have a dog, show me a dog. I believe you have a dog. If there's a God, show me a God. I believe there's a God. The evidence is not extraordinary, right? You don't need extraordinary evidence for a claim. You just need evidence, right? You just need reasons, not even evidence. I don't even subscribe to evidentialism or empiricism that much. Just reasons for why you have a particular position. That's it.
Yeah. And philosophical arguments for God's existence, are there certain arguments for which you think, well, if you could make that argument, then I would believe that God exists?
Well, I have some that I prefer than others. Like, for example, I don't think the argument from contingency is completely hosed. I mean, I do think that it doesn't get you to God, but I don't think you can hand wave it away. I don't like atheists that really just say, oh, this argument's stupid, because that's what they do to my arguments. My arguments are really good. I mean, I'm going to toot my, I'm going to toot myself. Yeah, they're good. They're valid. They're sound. They've been vetted for years now. But I see an atheist go, that's invalid. I'm like, it's modus ponens. What the hell you mean it's invalid? Where do you go from there, right?
Yeah.
So I do like the argument from contingency, but I just don't think it gets to God. But I do think it raises the question of, hey, look, you only got so many choices. You've got some infinite regress of past eternal time for an actual infinity.
Which seems unreasonable to me. Yeah.
Unreasonable, but not illogical, right? I mean, it shocks the mind because our mind can't process infinity.
Yeah, but
things
maybe not illogical, but I think it's impossible if you really think about what an infinite regress is, and you think what that would mean for the universe, then I think you would come to the conclusion this is impossible in the actual world. Maybe it's possible in
I
math
don't know if it's
and
impossible.
stuff like that, but not in the real world.
Yeah, see, I disagree. Again, you only got whether possible or not, you only got really three supposed possibilities. I don't think it's impossible, but I do think it's hard to imagine because our brains are not capable of imagining actual infinities, whether actual infinities exist or not. Who knows?
That's true, but still, we can think about it and come with examples, which are mathematical sound, but
in the real
world,
I'm not going to disagree with that. It seems odd that something would be an infinite regress, but if it is, it's no more odd than believing in a God that's has existed for all time and eternity, right? So, in a way, God is an infinite regress.
I don't agree with that, but
we'll get back to that. We'll table that one. So you also got the explanation of brute fact, or something that's contingent, going back
brute
to
fact. But brute fact seems to me like you don't explain anything. You just say, we don't need an explanation.
It's a cop out. Not gonna.
It's a cop out. Yeah.
I'll bite the bullet on that one, but I do tend to that particular horn.
Really?
Yeah. Well, because the other option is the metaphysical necessity, right? So you've got metaphysical necessity, brute fact, or infinite regress. There's really no other options I can think of.
Yeah, but what is exactly your problem with metaphysical necessity?
Well, I don't have a problem with it. I don't rule it out.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I don't rule it out.
But then you just say, well, it doesn't mean that metaphysical necessity is God. It could be something else.
Right. And what would this metaphysical necessity be such that this universe has to exist in the conditions it has? It doesn't. None of those things answer the principle of sufficient reason. None of them explain anything. They really don't. No. But the theist will posit, hey, look. There's a metaphysical necessity. Okay, let's say that there is, but it's God, and then it's like, well, okay, why did God create this particular possible world out of all the other ones? What was his reasoning? Was he beholden to? Did he have to create this one, which kind of limits his aseity and authority?
That's a good question, but do you need to answer that question if the metaphysical necessity is the best explanation?
But
you don't need an explanation for the explanation, I would say.
Well, but then what are we trying to explain, right? We're trying to ask for a metaphysical accounting, and so if we don't understand why God did certain things, we're not really explaining anything, right? I can say, hey, why did this guy build a home?
Yeah. Yeah, well,
he built the home, but why? Well, he wanted to live in it. That's the explanation,
Yeah. Yeah, well, theologically, I think there are many good answers of the question, why God created this world. But then you're in the theological realm and not in the philosophical realm anymore. And then you're talking about which theistic worldview is the best. And then you're in a totally different discussion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But Christianity, of course, does have an explanation for why God created this universe.
Well, again, depending on your version of Christianity, look, you can go into the theodicy like from Plantinga or from Hicks, but these are possible explanations of why did God create us. Well, He wanted us to learn, and okay, that's a possible explanation. I can okay with that, but then you get into the evidential problem of evil. Well, why is there so much evil in the world as opposed to one less evil in the world, right? So. Yeah. I don't know how much it really explains, but I don't begrudge the Christian for positing those things, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of atheists make their errors. They're like just by fiat say, look, I'm not going to allow the theist to posit a deity like that. Well, why not? I mean, I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you would agree that for the argument of contingency, infinite, assuming it's possible, infinite regress, brute fact, or metaphysical necessity. Can you think of any options?
Agree. Okay. No, I agree. Those are the options. Yeah. And then I would say that brute fact is not an explanation at all. So I wouldn't see that as a reasonable option.
I don't think any. I don't think any of them are, though. That's the problem. I don't think all three of them don't explain to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think metaphysical necessity is the only viable explanation, because I think an infinite regress is simply impossible. Well, I'm sure you've heard of Hilbert's Hotel, for example.
Yes. Yes. Hilbert's Paradox of the Grand Hotel. Yes, of course.
but there are more arguments against infinite regress. For example, you could say, let's say there are two planets. One orbits the Earth, one orbits the sun or a star in 1 year, and the other orbits it in 10 years. Then, when time flies, the first planet will have rotated around the planet, around the sun, many more times than the other one. And then when time flies, it will increase and increase, and they will be. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm trying to here. So go follow
it's
through
hard
the
for
analogy.
me when I'm not used to speaking English.
No,
so
it's great. Quite all right. No big deal.
Okay, but one planet will after a while, one planet will turn around the star many more times than the other, and when time flies, the gap will increase and increase because one goes faster than the other. But once you get to an actual infinity, when there's an infinite amount of time that has passed, then they both have orbited their star for an infinite number of times. So there's something very strange happening. So first they go like this.
Well, no, I get that.
And then they go exactly to the same point. They have turned around their star for just as many times, and that's absurd.
Because you got a past infinity, right? Eternal past, and you got eternal future. In the eighth, and that's, by the way, only really in A theory of time. In B theory of time, the past, present, future all coexist.
Oh, it's like a block. Yeah.
So it really depends on how you're viewing the time thing. But you're right; it is difficult to comprehend something. With an infinite past or an eternal future. But it's the same thing as trying to wrap your head around something like God, and you're going to be, eternal in heaven.
I would say that it's not that you don't comprehend this. This is just what follows. This is mathematically what would follow, but in the real world, it's absurd. And Hilbert's Hotel is the other example. I
have no issue with Hilbert's Hotel. I agree with Hilbert's Hotel and Compton's,
But you would agree that such an hotel could not exist in the real world. It's just something we can come up with. But that's what an infinite regress does imply, absurdities like that. So I would say an infinite regress must be impossible. And that's what in philosophy usually works as an argument, as a defeater to someone who says something. If you can show, well, this argument leads to an infinite regress, then philosophers usually agree, well, you have defeated the argument, because everybody recognizes that it's not an explanation. It is absurd.
Yeah, I would put it this way. Science doesn't exclude an infinite regress on its own. Mathematics and philosophy tend to, if you ask most of them, probably the majority would say actual infinities don't exist.
Potential infinities. That's
potential infinities exist. I have no problem with potential infinities. We that's fine. But as far as an actual infinity, I don't think they probably do exist. But again, we have a very limited comprehension when you start dealing with these Alf null and cardinalities. I mean, even understanding, Hilbert's paradox of the Grand Hotel, or getting into a diagonal proof of some kind. Those things are complicated, and most people they're not going to try to wrap their minds around these types of things, saying, "Oh, wait, you have two infinities, but one's a greater infinity than another." How does that work?
But
it works on paper. It works mathematically. Yes. Right.
Yeah. That's true.
And I think I agree with you on that. If we put the infinite regression aside, because again, I don't think that's viable either. That's why I don't hold to it. Would you agree, though, maybe our minds are so limited that we have to accept maybe a brute fact because we wouldn't be able to apprehend the reality of what the universe is anyways? I mean, assuming there's no God, just for a second. As you said, the atheist has to kind of come up with a materialistic explanation. You don't think it makes sense to say, look, maybe we just may not be able to understand this stuff. It'd be like a fish trying to understand, calculus through his fishbowl. We are physically, biologically prohibited and isolated. That's why we have to filter what we perceive to be the universe to the degree that if there is an overall metaphysical necessity for the universe that's not God, maybe the naturalist says, look, we may not be able to even possibly to apprehend something like this.
Yeah, but then still I wouldn't say it's a brute fact. I would simply say we don't know what the explanation is, but it's not the brute fact. The brute fact just implies that I'm I'm ignorant, I would say.
Well, no, I think brute fact means that we're either ignorant or there isn't one, right? There isn't an explanation, or we just
or you would say that
yeah.
maybe the universe itself is the metaphysical necessity. Maybe you
Some
could
do.
say that.
A pantheist might even say that. But if the universe is a metaphysical necessity, it raises the question: what makes it a metaphysical necessity? You had talked about in your video, like fine-tuning argument, which I'm going to be talking about on Agree to Argue with Dr. Ron, and I don't remember the other person I'm going to be talking to, but it does raise the question: if the universe is a metaphysical necessity, why is it like we have 3 dimensions in space and 1 dimension in time, as opposed to some other combination, which completely viable in physics?
I don't think you can defend it, because there's so many contingent things, so many things that you would say, well, why would it need it to be this way? Yeah, exactly.
You're right. It's hard. Well, I mean, I used to be a lot more passive on the fine tuning argument, but I think now that I've been like looking in for the last couple of years, it is something that shouldn't be hand waved away. Again, you had mentioned about arguments that I think are interesting. The fine tuning argument is interesting. I do subscribe to the weak anthropic principle, not necessarily the strong. But again, when I see atheists evaluate these arguments, I cringe. I straight up cringe. Look, there are ways to evaluate these arguments honestly and fairly. But when I got, like, for example, like the Kalam and the original Kalam, not like William and Craig's, but the Kalam as far as the whatever begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist or had a cause.
Began to exist.
Straight modus ponens. Do you know how many atheists I've talked to says, "Oh, that's invalid"?
Oh, no, that's really
how is that invalid?
Yeah, it's a valid deductive argument.
Right.
So if the premises are true, the conclusion must follow. Yeah.
Right, but where do you go with that? And you try to explain to them, look, this is a valid argument. You can reject premise 1 or reject premise 2. You can't really reject both, obviously, because
those are your only options. Yeah.
But pick one and go with it. And so and on William and Craig's, I think you could be a little more lenient or a little more. I think you can reject more than one premise, but in modus ponens, how are you going to reject both? And so I do reject that the universe had a beginning only for the fact that I accept the conditional as true. But the problem is that I think that, for example, if I was to attack it, there's a difference between saying begins within time as opposed to beginning of time. I think there's a little equivocation going on there. But that's how you would as you know, that's how you would address these arguments. You don't just say, "Oh, look, here's a valid rule of inference. It's a valid."
Yeah, that's how you discuss it. You just attack the premises, not the fact that the argument is sound or not, because it's just a good deductive argument.
But that's what I'm used to, and this is why I talk about these things on my channel. I get a guest on who study these types of things to explain to atheists and atheists as well. It's not just atheists, but mostly the atheists saying, look, if you're going to be having these discussions, don't say stupid shit like modus ponens is invalid because it starts with if. Don't do this. Just don't. It's dumb. It's straight up dumb. It's flat Earth level stupid. And then I get called a theist for saying things like that. You're attacking atheists. Well, yeah, I'm a non-believer. They're in my camp. That's a little bit of tribalism. I don't want them to look bad.
You can attack both camps.
Right? So let's see here. What else did you have in your video I wanted to go over real quick? So you did talk about the fine-tuning. You talked about, intelligent design. And we talked a little about that prior. So what's your views on that?
Well, my view is that you can make a good case for intelligent design. I actually wrote my master thesis on intelligent design and defended the proposition that intelligent design is a viable theory and should be accepted in the scientific community. But there are a lot of misconceptions about intelligent design. So I would say it is the definition of intelligent design is that. Let me get it.
And while you're doing that, go ahead. You found it. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a study of justifiable design inferences, and an intelligent design theorist tries to make a distinction between intelligent causes and natural causes. And this is actually not a strange theory, because it's already being used in different scientific disciplines, such as archaeology or cryptography or the search for extraterrestrial life. It's all, it's something that is already
there's a real world application for, when we see something that we know has been.
Yeah, there's an application for this.
Yeah, when we see something that has been designed before, like an arrowhead, we know that when we find one, we can compare it and say, look, we've seen humans do this. But we've never seen a mind independent of a brain do anything. But I do think that we should look is there an intentionality here, or that was the case that
Yeah.
produced this? And I have no problem with them doing research on intelligent design hypothesis. I really don't. I think that they should.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to pan out, but there's nothing wrong with talking about it. Real quick though, so somebody in the audience said you can't. He said you can deny both premises on the kalam on the modus ponens. I don't see how. If you the only way the first premise can be false if it's the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. So if P is true and Q is false, then the second premise must be true. So if the first premise is false, the second premise must be true, because the only way the first premise in the conditional can be false is if P is false and T is true. So I don't know how you would reject both of them. Am I incorrect there, people?
No, I agree.
Okay, yeah, because the conditional is only false when P is true and F is false, or excuse me, Q is false. So other than that, it's always true. The premise one is always true. That's what you're trying to argue from there. So if the premise one is true, then the second premise you have to deny or accept the conclusion. So I don't know how you would deny both premises, at least in the modus ponens version. In other versions of the kalam, there's a little more leeway. But anyways. Back to the intelligent design. So, it's funny because, you and I both agree that younger creationism is bunk, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And a lot of them are intelligent design people, but I think they kind of misunderstand the point of intelligent design. Again, I'm not an ID proponent. I'm not as against it as I am young with creationism, obviously. But the whole thing with evolution was Darwin wanted to come up with a teleonomic explanation, right? He wanted to say, hey, look, this has the appearance of design. But does it require a teleological explanation or God or some kind of intentionality? Well, he at least showed that it could happen. Now, you can push it back to the very beginning and say, okay, well, what got that in motion? And do more of an Aquinas, first prime mover kind of thing. Okay, I'm okay with that. But how would you approach looking for things for intelligent design? Because you did your paper on this.
I would first say what the definition is, and then I would get some misconceptions about evolution, because it has something to say about evolution, and people think that when you're an intelligent design theorist that you disagree with the evolutionary story, but there is a lot of ambiguity in the definition of evolution. It can mean three different things. That's the process of change and diversification of living things over time. That's not a controversial theory. Everybody, as far as I know, accepts that definition of evolution. Or the theory of universal common descent, that we all came from one-celled organisms. That's more controversial, and believers disagree on this. So young Earth creationists would say this is not in line with the Bible. But there are believers who, like myself, I think this is plausible, who think that universal common descent could be God's way of making this world. But it's when you get to the third definition that intelligent design theorists disagree, and that's the mechanism behind evolutionary change. And that's the natural selection and random mutation operating on random variations in living things. And that's called neo-Darwinism, that the mechanism of random mutation operating on random variations, that can explain all the complexity we see in living things. And that's where intelligent design theorists disagree. And so I think that's where the discussion should focus on neo-Darwinism. Is there evidence for that?
I agree and I disagree. I don't think the term you're using evolution fits there. I think the term evolutionary theory would fit better for what you're describing, right? Because evolution.
Yeah, because there are many evolutionary theories.
So evolutionary theory. If everything you just said I agree with, except for I would term it as evolutionary theory. The reason being is evolution is pretty ubiquitous as a change of allelic frequency in a given population of species over time. Over generation. So that's kind of the standard, and there's many different ways of phrasing that. But evolutionary theory doesn't incorporate common descent or not, right? The modern evolutionary synthesis combined with descent modification is basically what's constitutive of the modern theory of evolution, which does have neo-Darwinism. And as you said, the mechanism for mutational rates and selective pressure. So all that's fine. I have no issue with that. But then the intelligent design person comes in and says, okay, is there any intelligence behind this? And so I've talked to different ones that have different approaches. One of them's the approach is that God is constantly tinkering, right? God is making things happen. He's making a mutation here. He's making a
Yeah,
plant
that's
mutation here.
progressive creationism.
Progressive
Yeah.
creationism, exactly. And there's also, hey, God set it all in motion. He kind of knew where it was going to end up, and he said, roll the dice, but I already know how it's going to be because of determinism. Which kind of do you adhere to? Because mutations have to be random with respect to the environment, right? That's the whole point. Of biology.
Philosophically, I kind of have a problem with the neo-Darwinian view that says it's a random process, and then a God that's behind it who is orchestrating it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would say when a God is making an idea of creating something out of the different species who develop, I would say it's not random anymore. It's a fundamental difference.
Well, I think it's random.
I have a problem with that.
It's random with respect to the environment. We don't know how the environment's going to change. So if we don't know how the environment's going to change, then any kind of selective pressures on any kind of phenotypic
but God would
trait.
know. So in that sense,
Well, he'll know, sure, yeah. I mean, if God exists, he's going to know. I'll give him that. But we have no idea how things are going to change with respect to the environment.
So okay, from our perspective, it would be random.
It's stochastic,
not from God's perspective. So
sure,
maybe it's a semantic thing, but I have a problem with that. And I think there's evidence to think there some form of progressive progressive creationism could be true. So I'm more leaning to that camp, although I see problems with it as well, as to why wouldn't God just create it and just sometimes do something, and when does he do something? I don't know, but I'm not interested in that question. I'm just interested in the question, is there evidence for intelligent design in the development of species?
So you don't know if he's actually, involving himself, but yeah, no, I will grant you that if God exists, he's going to understand how the climate's going to change. He understands how selective pressure is going to happen.
Yeah.
But to me, when I say random, I mean stochastic for the most part, right? Because if we don't know, even though it's a deterministic system, if we don't have the information, it's random to us. And so when I throw a dice, if I go to Vegas and I throw the dice, sure, I realize as soon as the dice leave my hands, you can map it out with physics and you can know exactly how they're going to land. But I don't have that information. It's gambling to me, right?
Yeah. For God, nothing is random.
Exactly. He's going to know every vector of every particle from day one, kind of thing. Even if you factor in quantum stuff, and God would probably understand some mechanism about quantum better than we ever will. I did put the call-in number and the PIN number if people want to call. We got about 20 minutes because I don't want to keep you too long. It is late for you, but people are loving this, by the way. So I think they like you.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, a bunch of atheists that like a Christian. What is this? This is crazy talk. Can't have this.
Yeah.
So if you guys got some questions, call in. I am looking at the live chat, but I wanted to introduce you to the Thinking Dutchman, because again, I liked his video, and I would love to have you on a couple times. I have philosophers on all the time, so if you want to come on and just hang out, chat, and do these types of things, let me know. But I just want to get you to introduce to my audience, because again, I like listening to people that make sense, and your videos make sense. And again, I have been preaching this stuff, and people are going to say, look, Steve preaches. But I have been explaining to people this crap for years on end. I've gotten so much blowback from the atheist community going, Steve's a mean poopy head, but they can't refute my logic and my arguments very well. In fact, most of them don't even try any longer. They just go, oh, well, Steve's just wrong. And then but I love that because people go, well, why is he wrong? And they go, well, because reasons. Well, what are those reasons? As you said, even not believing somebody, they have to have reasons why they discount my arguments. You don't have to accept them. Exactly. You don't have to reject them. But if they say, I don't believe you, that requires a burden of proof of what failed that you didn't make a decision on it, Yeah. Oh, Cheshire likes you.
True. That's nice to hear.
Yeah, she likes you. Let's see here. She probably be calling in here. This is a nice treat, somebody said. Aw.
This is the what?
They said this is a nice treat.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Subscribing to the Thinking Dutchman, so you've got a new subscriber.
Great.
Lord Brian says, I have an argument in the works, but it's for classical theism, deism, not for any other revealed religions. I call it argument from natural selection of religion. So, like selective social pressures on religion and how it changes, because I think those already exist. But I'd be interesting to hear it. Chess, I already know you thought he was cute. You don't need to tell me this. She says, tell him I think he's cute. I know chess too well, yeah, so I already figured that. By the way, do you know my WASP argument? Have you ever read that?
No, I haven't heard of it.
All right, let me run
Tell
it
me.
by you while people call in. Get your professional opinion here, because you have actually an expertise in this particular topic. Okay, so my WASP argument, a lot of theists have been latching on to, and even a lot of atheists, because it seems unassailable, because it's an if-then-else. And, of course, that is a complete logically thing. You can make a tautology, the whole 9 yards. And so my argument goes like this. By the way, the proof is like this long, but the summary is
an argument for what? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
The argument goes like this. If an atheist wants to have negative atheism as normative for atheism, right? So not BP, does not believe P. If an atheist wants to have negative atheism as normative for atheism, then a theist has to be allowed to have negative theism for theism, such that if you don't believe that God does not exist, that's necessary and sufficient for theism, or else you're a special pleading. That else is very important there, because special pleading is a type of illogical fallacy, obviously. And so they have to recognize, look, if you allow this for this group and you don't allow it for this group, that is by definition special pleading. And so
you're not consistent.
Yeah, you're not consistent. And so a lot of people say, well, no theist would ever do that, because theists say, yes, we believe in God. And I get that. I really get that. But atheism in philosophy has always, typically, for the last couple hundred years, been a positive epistemic belief. But if you want to change it, you want to like make it into negative, like Flew wanted, okay. My argument is not that theists should change. My argument is you have to allow them to change it if they wanted to, or at least say, hey, look, you don't believe God doesn't exist? You're a theist. Well, wait a minute. I'm not a theist, but you don't believe God doesn't exist. That's what the atheist does to me as an agnostic. So that's what
doesn't make sense.
It's called weak atheism special pleading. That's why I call it WASP.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good argument, yeah. And what do atheists say to this when you present it?
Oh, that's easy. Steve's a mean poopy head, and he's wrong by fiat.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, it's the defeater of all defeaters. Being a poopy head makes you just wrong on logic, I guess. But I have like 5 or 6 different arguments. Like, for example, like this isn't really a great argument, but it's the truth. A lot of these atheist groups promote fence sitting, if you think about it. I mean, a fence sitter is somebody who hasn't made a decision whether God exists or God does not exist. So you're in between there. So when they say I merely lack a belief and they don't make any positive claims, they're fence sitting on the proposition.
Yeah.
You know, so they hate that. They're like, well, I'm not a fencer. I don't believe. Yeah, but you don't believe both propositions. The one that proposition is true or one that proposition is false. There's always 2 propositions for every one. It's always a negation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Super chat, Kawasa 5001. Since you're Dutch, I'm sure he's talking about you, by the way. Since you're Dutch, there's this guy that constantly yammers continental philosophy is the norm. How is the philosophical landscape in Europe? Well, that's a great question.
Yeah, it's really postmodern. The continental philosophy is more popular. Yeah, it's really you really have to argue with people about truth itself. So a lot of people don't even believe truth exists, and then I usually ask them, well, is that true? And then
I can't stand postmodern and stuff. I mean, like, it's so ridiculous. I get involved in these discussions where people love defining stuff just all over the place. It's like, oh, what do you mean by that? Define this. It's like, look, we've had thousands of years of these discussions. I've used these terms very normatively, very, very the most common things. And so if you ask me to like define truth, I want to say, look, pick a theory. If you want to use correspondence theory,
if it corresponds with reality, I would say.
That's fine. I got no issue with that. I tend to deflationary theory, but whatever. There's no right or wrong answer to that. It's what how do you want to view these things? But if you want to say
that it exists,
go ahead.
But it should be obvious that it exists. Otherwise, you can't even discuss about things. Whenever you start a discussion, you already have a conception of truth.
Yes.
So everybody believes this, but still, you have to start arguing with people about truth, because when you just start arguing, say, well, I believe this and these are my reasons, then it doesn't even matter to them how good your reasons are, because they don't even believe in truth or the value of reasons. They really think everything is a big power play, and that's the only way.
You're so right, man.
Our views are accepted or not.
So right.
And it's not about reason and stuff like that. So, it's really strange, but you have to start with arguing about truth. And once you've settled that, then you can start have a real discussion.
I could agree with you more, man. I told you about the person the other day that said math, arguing math is subjective and logic is objective and everything's subjective by this weird, I call it, and I don't know if this is, again, I just made up this term one day, but it might exist, so I don't know. But I just call it subjective reductionism. And what I mean by that is that so then everything is subjective. It doesn't matter. Since you're in your mind, but it's like they misunderstand what objective means. They misunderstand that. Look, if you do an experiment, I do experiment. It's subjectively we should get the same results, right? Logic is objective. You do a proof, I do a proof. We should come up with the same proof.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Once logic becomes subjective, you can't even argue anymore either. Then you can just say, well, those arguments you gave are maybe valid for you, but not for me. So then you're done.
Exactly.
doesn't help anyone. Yeah.
And
but it's strange. Many people do believe this.
No, I know they do. No, it's frustrating. It's like a weird form of denialism and obstructivism.
And you know what's strange? It's especially at universities that people believe this. So the higher educated people believe these strange things, and the normal people, they agree with you that of course truth exists, but it's the higher educated people that
can't stand that.
Very strange things.
I can't. That would drive me crazy, man. You get the Jordan Petersons of the world kind of thing. Although he's not that far gone, I'm sure he thinks there's truth. But I mean, if you have to start the basics every single time with every single discussion and define every single term, I'm not going to waste my time with that person. I had that happen the other day. So they're like, well, what do you mean by God? What do you mean by true? What do you mean by proposition? What do you mean by... And I'm like, oh, look, go read a book. Go read a book and get back to me. And they're like, well, if you don't define your terms, look, if you want to have the discussion from down here, go ahead. I'm not interested in that. I'm not going to sit here in 2000s of years with a philosophy that's pretty normal. I'm not going to explain to you what a proposition is, even though I know you know what it, not you, but the person I was talking to. They know what these terms is, but they're just obfuscating.
Yeah.
And I think it's a complete waste of time. But I do want to thank the Intrigued Feline, real quick, who's in my audience. She noted a logical error in one of my blogs. And wait, guess what? Logic is objective.
Yeah, so you have to do something about it then.
And so I fixed it. It wasn't like I said, hey, look, she's wrong. She's a mean poopy head, blocked, reported. But, it's logic, right? So I looked at it and I said, shit, she's right. I mean, what am I going to do? And I fixed it. Yeah. Now it's correct. So this is why I have my audience proof my stuff, because I do make mistakes like anybody else, but because math is objective and logic is objective. When I do make a mistake, and it was basically more of just a brain fart typo, but when they do correct it, I'm like, oh, okay, you're right. Let me fix this. It should, of course, be like this. It wasn't a conceptual error or anything like that. I was just like, I put the wrong symbol in, which happens all the time. As well as I do, a conjunction and a disjunction, it's not hard to flip those around. So,
yeah, exactly. But you do believe in objective truth, but do you also believe in objective morality?
I knew you were going to ask that at some point because that was in your video. You want the surprising answer? Actually, I do.
Yes. You believe in objective morality?
I'm a moral realist. Yeah.
Okay. So where do you ground it?
Unimoria. I think Sam Harris' approach makes sense to me. Now, I like error theory as well. I like Mackey's approach. Do I adhere to that? No, but I think error theory has some really good, interesting points to it, from argument from queerness, and his points about, look, these moral facts are all false. But to me, I think it's completely fine to build an objective moral framework to have objective morality. It doesn't mean everything is objective, right? But if you have one objective moral fact, objective morality exists. And I think we can build a system where objective morals exist. And I think most philosophers accept moral realism. But atheists, for some strange reason, have a knee-jerk reaction against that. Morals must be subjective. There's no such thing as moral objectivism. Look, where I disagree with Carr would be probably, I believe you don't have to have a God to have objective morality. I think objective morality exists. But the non-theist is going to say, sure, let's ground it in something else. I even think that grounding in God makes it a little more subjective. It's ethical subjectivism. But that's a discussion that two people could have, right? But we both agree, I think there's objective moral facts. I'm okay with that, sure.
Yeah, I would have a problem with that, because I think you always end up with the is-ought problem from Hume. You can describe how reality is. You can scientifically determine whether harming, what it means to harm people, and then say, well, harming people is wrong. So we can objectively say, well, putting people in the fire or something is objectively wrong because you're harming them. That's a fact. I agree with that, but I don't see how that fact brings you to morality. That's the is-all problem. It is a fact, but why does it mean that you should act in a certain way?
I think it's more harms than benefit when you say something along the lines of at least it's more defensible. You shouldn't harm people for the sake of harming people. That to me is objectively true, right? If you're grounded in harms and benefits, there's no reason to ever harm somebody just for the sake of harming somebody, right? But if the people could have then applied to consequentialism without that caveat. Well, I need to inject you with something. I'm harming you. So you have to. It's for the sake of harming. I think really makes that objectively the case. But we have a super chat real quick. Super Skinny Pete, $5. What did you mean when you were asked by Tom in Boxes when he asked what follows from your argument? You said nothing. Did you think on it? Yeah, nothing really follows. Matter of fact, it's not. The only thing that follows from the argument is that if people, or the WASP argument, is if people don't allow the theists to do it or don't recognize that they have the ability to do so, that's special pleading. That's the only thing that follows. It's not earth shattering, but I don't understand why some atheists think that the WASP argument is so bizarre and that they think it's so wrong. And they, by the way, they don't understand it for the most part. But I have not had a single defeater to WASP yet that makes any sense whatsoever, because it's just saying if you allow the weak condition here, you must allow for the weak condition here. That's it. And by the way, I have a Venn diagram that I helped. I came up with it, and then a guy named Landon Kurt Knoll helped co-develop. He's a mathematician, computer scientist, brilliant dude. And it's funny because I'll give you a little story real quick. One of the moderators in one of the groups, I think she was a mod, but somebody in one of the Facebook groups was like, "Oh, that's invalid," and I'm like, "It's a Venn diagram. What's invalid with this?" But they're like, "Oh, blah 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 blah." I'm like, "Look, you might want to go ask somebody that knows what they're talking about, because I can guarantee it. This Venn is not incorrect." She's okay. So she says, "I know a PhD that teaches epistemology or math or something." And she comes back and she's like, "Oh, he didn't find a problem with it." I'm like, "Oh, go figure, right?" But people will just throw this stuff out like, "Oh, Steve's WASP argument is wrong." But most of the big name atheists, they won't touch it. They will not address it because they've been told by people that know what the fuck they're talking about. "Oh, this is actually legit. This is a good argument. It's nothing earth-shattering. I'm not saying that I've solved the Riemann hypothesis, but my argument is valid and sound. What else do they want?
Yeah.
I'm really caffeinated today, so I apologize.
You're really what?
Caffeinated.
Caffeinated, yeah, me too, a little bit.
What kind of coffee you drink?
Just filter coffee from I think Nescafe or something. I don't know. My wife buys it.
This is 3-time caffeine turbo. It's called.
I can't see it. I just see the.
Oh yeah, because
the background.
Isn't that great? I love that. So somebody says Landon is the underknown genius of our age. Actually, he's well known. Landon is a well-known computer scientist. If you go look at his wiki page, he is actually in the field of computer science. He is very well known. I mean, he kind of helped come up with TCP/IP protocol. So let's see here. What else we got here? What kind of questions you got from? We've got about about 5 minutes or so, give or take, before we wrap it up. Like I said, I don't want to go too long. I did put the call-in number pinned. Nobody wanted to call in, and I think you scared them off, Carl.
No,
that's okay. I think it's only because they all agree with you.
That's fine.
We like to get callers that disagree, and nobody in the live chat's disagreeing, really.
Oh, really?
Yeah, surprising. Let me ask this: how many of you have go subscribe to his channel? Go subscribe. Shout out to his channel. Let's see here. Not publicly known. I mean, I Landon is kind of the hidden gem of our community, right? If Cheshire calls in, we'll go for another 2 hours, so we don't want that. So anyways, what's your next kind of video coming up? And my
next video
use
will
any
be
of this for your video if you want to talk about it.
My next video will be about faith. I will actually address a comment that Jordan Peterson made. Jordan Peterson has a lot to say about believing God. We were just talking about it, that he doesn't like the question, do you believe in God? Because he thinks it's really hard for us to answer the question whether we believe in God, because as a psychologist, he knows how we can fool ourselves into thinking we believe something while actually we don't really believe it. So he grounds faith in what we do instead of what we say we believe.
Actions.
So faith is based on our actions, not on what we say, because we can say a lot of things, and who knows
but I got
whether
a
it's
problem
true or
with
not.
that. And let me run it by you real quick before I end this. There's certain things called, as you know, incorrigible beliefs. And so if I feel pain, it is true that I feel pain, right? I mean, I cannot be wrong about incorrigible beliefs. It's true by virtue of the nature that I believe it. So if I've convinced myself that I believe something, how is that any different than anything else? I still believe it, whatever the reasons why I convinced myself. But if I believe it, I believe it. I mean, I don't know what he means by that.
But I kind of agree with Peterson partly, but I think he doesn't address the concept of faith completely, and that's what I address in the video. But I agree that what you do is what you believe. So if somebody says, I don't know if you know about the Ravi Zacharias scandal. I don't know if you know him.
I know who he is, but what scandal?
Yeah,
the guy's all over the place.
There's a big scandal. He was a really big apologist, but he died recently, and now something has come out that he really has molested a lot of women.
I didn't know anything about that.
It's really terrible. But Jordan Peterson would say, well, Ravi Zacharias said that he believed in Christianity, but when we look at his actions, we see something very different. He probably believed more in fulfilling his own needs and thinking that would make him happy
that might be something to that argument.
So I agree with that.
To me, they're almost like performance contradictions, right?
Yeah, but
they go against what we believe. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, where I disagree with Peterson is that he doesn't make a distinction between belief and faith, and he's focused on faith, on having trust in God.
Mm-hmm.
While I think you can believe in the proposition that God exists, while at the same time not trusting Him.
Yeah,
because
trust
belief
and faith are not synonymous.
It's a commitment. So you can really believe that God exists, while at the same time think, well, I don't want to follow this God because I don't trust Him or I don't like Him or whatever. Mm-hmm. But still be genuine in your belief that He exists. And the Bible actually confirms this. It says that even the demons believe in God's existence, but they don't act in good ways, of course. They only act in evil ways.
Yeah.
So I make that distinction in the video, and I say more about it. So that's my next video.
You look at it more of a pistis, right? The way the word faith is used. And by the way, I think that's actually correct. I haven't known Arn, I think, butchers that to hell. Arn Roth, you know him, but I think that you're definitely.
I know
right
him.
On yeah. He makes we used to be great friends. I mean, I've known Arn for a very long time. Oh yeah, he used to be a huge person on the channel. We used to have him on all the time. Really great guy, as far as I think. But his philosophy sucks. And I explained to him that not believing something, not believing negation is not a double negative, and he just went nuts one day. But anyways, he hates the fact that I keep explaining to him philosophy. And he thinks I'm some kind of weird apologetic, that I'm just destroying his life works, because in his view, anybody who doesn't believe it is an atheist. Anybody else is just wrong. And it's just like, all right, it doesn't work that way, man. You stick with phylogeny, stick with biology, but this lack of belief, atheism shit, it doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't explain anything. It doesn't. If anything, it makes atheists look really unintelligent, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because it makes them look weak, because it's like they're saying, "Oh, we don't have any evidence, so we have to hide behind this meaningless definition."
I mean, if they came to that, if they came to the conclusion of agnosticism, like I have, honestly, no problem with that. But they're hiding behind it. And by the way, I'll tell you this before I end this. I have found that once you start talking to a lot of atheists, like we had David Smalley on the other day, they will not really tell you their own positions, right? They will not come clean. They will not say, look, I think all gods are bullshit, but I'm not going to claim that, because if I do, now I have a different burden of proof, a higher burden of proof, and I'm just going to say I don't believe.
Yeah.
That is dishonest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dishonest, yeah.
Yep. Okay, one last question. And Tree Feline, are rocks atheist? Because that's what Arn Rob says. Are rocks atheist?
Rocks atheist? Oh, are rocks atheists? Oh, that's the question. Yeah. Well, in that definition, they are. And cats are atheists, and plants are atheists. Yeah. And when we were babies, we were atheists. Yeah.
Yeah. Now the follow-up question, because in their weird dichotomy that you have to be, everything in the universe has to be atheist or theist for some reason. How silly do you think that is? Because Babies were not born atheists. Rocks are not atheists in philosophy. This is, I mean, Hobart in the 18th century had something said something along those lines. But you know what? This is not the 18th century, and it was just one man's opinion. Most philosophers think that if you say babies or rocks are atheists, they're going to look at you with some incredulity, like, what the hell are you talking about? That's nonsense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It just shows it's a very silly definition. Yeah,
I agree. All right, my friend. I don't want to take up too much time. I know it's late for you where in your lands, but thank you for this.
yeah.
And
10 o'clock. Thank you as well. I
I'm-
really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I'm going to keep in touch with you on this, and we'll get a topic. And if you want to join a panel of something like that, would you be willing to do that and talk about these types of
Yeah, I
things?
would definitely be willing to do that. Yes.
Love it.
Thank you.
Because we want to find people to bring into the community. Theist or atheist doesn't matter. We want to have civil dialogue. We want to talk about these different things. And this is what we're going to be doing on this channel and some other channels that I have. But anyways, it looks like the live chat really enjoyed this. So go subscribe to the Thinking Dutchman. You can find his videos in the link in the video description below. Go watch at least one about the Ricky Gervais thing. I think that one was really well done. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Ricky Gervais needs to stop talking about atheism. He doesn't know anything about atheism. So with that, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. I got tomorrow, I think at 8 a.m. I think it's been changed from 10 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific. I got Tony Reed coming in. He's going to have a discussion with Finding Truth, the guy that we had on with Dapper Dino. What could go wrong there? Later, guys.